Good evening. Montclair area. Okay. Okay. Good evening. On behalf of the League of Women Voters of the Montclair area, I'm pleased to welcome you to the Candidate Forum for the Verona Board of Education, sponsored by the Verona Conference of SEAs. I'm Donna Ward, and I'll be your moderator tonight. I just want to remind everyone that the League is a nonpartisan organization, and we never support or oppose political parties or candidates. This forum is being recorded and will be available on your district's YouTube channel and, of course, our own website, the League of Women Voters. We encourage the sharing of the recording of this event in its entirety, but do not allow editing or making public any excerpts from the recording. The League name, logo, event recording, or any materials from the event cannot be used in a way that could lead a viewer or a reader to infer League support of or opposition to a candidacy. Tonight, we have 5 candidates for 2 seats with 3-year terms for the Verona Board of Education that will be decided this November. The candidates are Erin Spiegelland, Diana Ferreira, Sarah Drappi, Mike Boone, and Denise Versella. Questions have been solicited from the public in advance and reviewed by a committee of parents from the Conference of SEAs. Our format is each candidate will be able to give a 2-minute opening and closing statement. We'll also have a question and answer session. Each candidate will have 1 minute to answer. We'll also allow all candidates to give a 30-second rebuttal if they want to after each candidate has answered. The timer will hold up a card warning you when you have 30 seconds left, and then a stop card when your time is up. Is that clear to everyone? Okay. All right, we're going to start alphabetically, then we'll rotate through. So our opening statement will start with Mr. Boone.
Good evening. Before I start, I want to take a moment and give a sincere and heartfelt thanks to Mrs. Drappi and all of those who have currently sit on the Verona Board of Education. These indeed have been interesting times, to say the least. Our school board dealt with a huge upheaval in all of our lives. They did the best with what they knew at that time amid a constantly changing information landscape. Nothing has been perfect. All of us have made sacrifices, but we have persevered, and we are all stronger because of it. Now, from my perspective, New Jersey schools are the best, among the best in the country. Verona, our schools are among the best in New Jersey. Why is that? It's because we have been at our best when we are united. From 9/11, something that I was intimately involved with, from hurricanes, all the way through COVID. We have proved that we can persevere. This unity is partly why our property values in Verona are so high and why they will likely persevere in a broader economic downturn. Further, it's worth noting that residents in this town have a large portion of their personal wealth tied to our homes. Well over 50% of what we pay in taxes goes to the Verona schools. That's close to approximately $800,000 a year. We need a school board that is focused on driving our continued success, providing a quality education in a safe and inclusive environment that isn't needlessly distracted by reactionary sentiment from some. This means ensuring our administrators have the flexibility and freedom to do their jobs to meet state mandated guidelines. Thank you.
Rappy.
Good evening. I'm Sarah Drappy. I'm a lifelong Verona resident, proud hillbilly, and graduate of VHS. I'm seeking election in my second three-year term to the Verona Board of Education. I'm a 10th-year special education teacher, coach, wife, and mother of two amazing daughters, one a second grader at Lanning and my other is a sixth grader at HBW. I truly appreciate the honor of serving Verona students over the past 3 years. I've developed skills in consensus building during board meetings and trainings. I've helped lead our district through unprecedented challenges. And this experience has taught me that I need to and can listen better to the community. No matter what, when I'm tasked with making a decision as a board member, I make every board decision by asking myself, what impact will this decision have on our students? After listening to parents and students and faculty over the past 3 years, it is evident that we have a long road to truly achieve equity in our schools. They have asked for improved guidance on colleges and careers, increased special education services in academics, athletics, and the arts, and access to G&T programs at all grade levels. We also need improved hiring practices to diversify our candidate pool, as well as provide more robust professional development on inclusivity in order to ensure every student feels safe and valued. I agree with all of these suggestions and will work hard to achieve as much of this as financially possible if elected. Some of my accomplishments as a board member include expanding mental health programs, hiring a consultant to begin our DEI progress, overseeing the completion of a $28 million referendum, and approving a budget with the most robust maintenance capital and capital reserves the district has seen in many years. In summary, I have this experience, perspective, and forward thinking to help shepherd Verona into its next phase. Thank you to the SCA for organizing and the League of Women Voters for moderating this great event tonight. I look forward to an opportunity to serve Verona students for another 3 years.
Thank you. Ms. Ferrera.
Hi, my name is Diana Ferreira, and I'm honored to be here tonight. Thank you to the Conference of SCAs and the Women's Voters League for hosting. I look forward to the opportunity to answer questions so that people can learn more about me from me. I'm a mother of two and have lived in Verona since 2017 with my husband, who's a Verona native. I started my career in marketing, and after having our daughter, I left to go back to school to become an educator. It was something that was kind of always pulling me. Since then, I've gotten my master's in literacy. I'm currently working towards my principal certification to work in an active role in leadership. I believe that my experience in life, in business, and in education, combined with my love for our community, will make me a strong board member. I believe in service leadership. And if elected, I will work to ensure that our children's educational experiences and well-being are above all else. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Spiegelman.
Thank you. My name is Aaron Spiegelman. I want to begin by thanking the Verona Conference of SCAs and the League of Women Voters of Montclair for hosting tonight's event, and by thanking everyone who came to join us here and who are watching from home. This is an important school board election. Who wins in November will decide which path the board will take over the next few years. Your engagement speaks to why Verona is such a strong community. I decided to run for school board because I wanted to make sure our children always come first. When our students walk out of the doors after graduating, I want to ensure that we prepare them as best we can for what lies ahead, whether it be academically, through extracurricular activities, or just helping them be good citizens. A big part of this is keeping politics and personal agendas out of the policy so that we can focus on the students' core needs. I also ran to make sure that parents and community members are heard and recognized, that the board is as transparent as it possibly can be so that about its decisions before they are made. We have a responsibility to address their concerns and respond to their comments, both those we agree with and those we don't. I'm not a political person by nature, but as a parent and a resident, I felt it was important for me to run this year. I have two children at HBW, so I have a personal stake. Additionally, education has always been paramount importance to me. I have 2 master's degrees, an MBA and an MFA. My wife is a teacher in a neighboring community, and I work for Rutgers. Education is the best tool for creating new opportunities and helping individuals move forward. I would welcome the opportunity to bring an outside perspective to the board. With over 25 years of working for companies such as Ford, AT&T, and Energizer, I've gained project management, finance, and legal skills that I look forward to bringing to bear. I also take pride in having a strong entrepreneurial spirit that comes from this experience. I enjoy finding unique solutions. I look forward to answering your questions tonight, and I hope I'm able to earn your vote.
Thank you. Ms. Brazella.
Thank you to the Verona Conference of SCAs and the League of Women Voters for organizing this event, and thank you for my fellow candidates for participating. As you know, I am Denise Frizella. I am a Verona mom of 2 and a resident of Verona for 16 years. I'm also an education attorney and advocate for students with special needs and their families, both in and out of Verona. I never thought I would run for the Board of Education or any elected office. It was not part of my life plan. However, after attending more board meetings than I can count, even pre-COVID, I felt compelled to do more than just speak at the microphone. I believe if you want something to improve, you don't just complain about it, you do something about it. As an attorney who practices primarily in the field of education and special education, I have a deep understanding of the laws and regulations that boards of ed must follow and know that a well-run school district runs well. One of my goals as a member of the board would be to ensure that we adhere to the letter and the spirit of the law. The core values I've established as part of my campaign are innovation, integrity, and communication. Each one of these values are important as we seek to improve our already great school system. Innovation, what changes can be made to lead to improvements overall? I have suggested adding members of the community to some of the Board of Ed committees as advisors. We have great, well-educated residents. Let's tap into them to help move us forward. Integrity, being open and honest with people is so vital. Even if it's not what someone wants to hear, sometimes it's what they have to hear, and explaining why you made that decision. Communication, clear, timely communication is so important. As parents, we are bombarded with emails, texts, even phone calls at times. It becomes impossible to keep up with. More is not better, just more. As a board member, I would push for a unified communication plan for all school and district messages so information is clear and timely. I hope by the end of this evening, I have earned your vote, and I look forward to hopefully sitting on the Board of Ed.
Thank you. Great. Now let's move to the first topic, which is in the area of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I'm going to be rotating through the order of questions for how you answer it. So I'll start with the first question. How would you further the goals of diversity, equity, and inclusion with regard to both school climate and culture and hiring, recruiting, and retainment practices? Will you support the recommendations by Grand River? And we'll start with Ms. Drappi.
The key to administering effective change in our climate and culture lies within the diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI work. But this can't be accomplished through one specific subject or curriculum only. Rather, DEI needs to be all encompassing through hiring, training, leadership, as well as curriculum. And in particular, it needs to be student driven. The core tenets of diversity, equity, and inclusion are at the heart of Board of Education Policy 5755. In this policy, the district is obligated to do the following: ensure the guidance program and support services provide access to adequate and appropriate counseling for all students, and that a full range of possible career and professional and/or vocational choices will be presented to all students. This policy also states that students with disabilities will have equal and bias-free access to all programs and activities. Unfortunately, this is not a reality yet for students in Verona. And that is the core of what I would like to accomplish: help all the students learn in a loving and safe environment where they feel seen, heard, and valued, where their cultures, races, and religions and abilities are represented in the books, curriculum, staff, faculty, and administration.
Thank you. Ms. Herrera.
I believe that when we think about DEI, I see it as an umbrella, right, in 3 separate sections. I think that keeping a close eye on the data that we receive from Grand Rivers is important when thinking about how we'll approach each section of that, if you will, right? Again, that's diversity, equity, and inclusion. I think that as parents and as community members, we want to ensure that our children are in comfortable, safe learning environments with good cultures. And I think that as an educator, it's important to ensure that that work is done top down and bottom up.
Thank you. Mr. Spiegelman.
So we, as a school system, should strive to be inclusive and diverse. You had asked, I think, three parts to the question. I'll start with the last. Grand Rivers made a number of suggestions, at least what we saw in the public portion. There are probably 5 to 10. There were some very good suggestions. They recommended we make sure we stay on top of our Title IX regulations. You don't want to run afoul of those. That could be fines and penalties. And of course, you want to be fair to the students. They also suggested that we do something to take hold and stop the turnover we're having at the school, because it's hard to implement a DEI policy if you have a new counselor every other year or not, or even every year. They also had some things that maybe we were not so keen to decide to implement. This is a decision that would be made as a community. It's not one that's based on my personal agenda and what I feel. And I'm out of time.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Virzella.
I'm going to start with the last part of that question first. Yes, I would support the initiatives from Grand Rivers. I think that most of the recommendations were well reasoned and something that we could implement in Verona. If you look at a lot of the recommendations surrounding hiring, it's looking at who we are able to attract to apply to our jobs, as well as who we're ultimately selecting. When I've asked questions at board meetings, at CPAC meetings, at every meeting I could think of, about how we are choosing to hire teachers, because we don't have many teachers of color. I was always told, well, we interview a diverse group, but we hire the best. And then my question after that is, how are we defining what is best? Is it someone's GPA from undergrad? Is it what someone's resume looks like? We need to define what's best and find the best people for Verona.
Thank you. Mr. Boone.
Thank you. 6 years ago, a young Verona student suffered years of systemic bullying. Eventually, this student took their own life. That student was targeted simply because they embraced life differently than most of us. Despite that tragedy, I still hear today from parents in our district talking about instances where their children were treated as an other. It goes without saying that we need a DEI program implemented in our school. I wholeheartedly endorse the Grand River suggestions. As far as the other parts of the question, how would I forward it? To echo the comments of the other panelists here, hiring is crucial. Students thrive in a learning environment where they see role models that they can aspire to be. The question and the challenge is, how do we cast a wide net to ensure we get everybody?
Thank you. Would anybody like to make a rebuttal to what's been said? No? I think there's a lot of agreement. Okay, moving on. Next topic. How would you respond to a parent who wants the district to limit access to or remove books from the school library or classroom? Ms. Ferreira.
So I am a huge advocate for literacy. I've spoken about this several times. I think that books are passages to perspectives, right? I think that books open doors for conversations, right, that we may not be able to have. So if a parent wanted a book taken off the shelf of the library, I would want to hear why that parent was so opposed to a book. And I also would, I think it's important to think about the age, right? Is it an elementary school child? Is it a high school child? Is the book appropriate in that age level? But, books are ways to, again, have perspectives from others when we don't have those experiences ourselves. So I'm a literacy advocate. This is what I do every day. I've done thesis and research work on it. I've spoken and presented. So I love books.
Thank you. Mr. Spiegelman.
I've heard this question several times, and frankly, I haven't heard a parent actually come to me suggesting there should be books removed from our library. I'm a big First Amendment advocate, short of obscene or truly troublesome in, say, violently graphic. I don't think books should be removed from the library.
Thank you. Ms. Virsella.
I read. I read everything I can get my hands on. I currently have 4 books in the middle of reading on my Kindle. Reading is something that, as a geeky middle school kid, I love to do, and to this day, I love. I cannot think of a time when I would advocate for removing a book from a library in Verona. We have incredible librarians, incredible teachers that select appropriate books for our students. If there's a book in a curriculum that a parent has a problem with, I would suggest that they read the book and then discuss the problems they have with it with their child. I don't ever think I would advocate for the books being removed from the school or the library.
Thank you. Mr. Boone.
The answer to the question is pretty simple. My answer would be no. Our school system hires librarians. They are very thoughtful. They are very well versed in what they provide. Our teachers also know best in terms of the curriculum and how those stories relate to their education plan. It is imperative that we on the school board let our teachers teach, let our librarians do their jobs with our support.
Thank you. Ms. Drappi.
As a teacher, I have seen firsthand how books can build empathy, and when carefully and intentionally selected, students can find their refuge in a book. I think it's important to hear a parent out if they want a book removed from the library. But I still don't think books should ever be removed from a classroom library or a school library outside of books maybe engaging in hate speech. If a parent still wants a book removed, then they really should be speaking to their child about not reading that book. Our librarians and teachers do an excellent job of vetting all the books that come into our buildings. And again, those books are intentionally chosen per grade level for students based on subject matter that can at times give students their only safe space.
Thank you. Would anyone like to make a rebuttal? Pretty much agreement. Okay, moving on. New Jersey sexual education curriculum changes. Promises to make information on sex-related, gender, and other topics more available in classrooms. What are the benefits and pitfalls of the new curriculum? And do you support the changes? Why or why not? Mr. Spiegelman.
I think some of the concerns around the new curriculum are about timing, where some parents feel what may be appropriate in, let's say, high school is being introduced at maybe the 4th grade level. And I think that's a reasonable question and concern. What I personally feel, again, it's not a driving factor. I'm here to work with the community. The state has passed standards, and we need to be able to navigate both. So the best path forward is one with discussion, making parents aware, I think, of what's in there early, so there can be that discussion, allowing parents to opt out in an easy, transparent manner, and then doing what's required by the state.
Thank you. Ms. Virsella.
I have taken the time to review the curriculum, particularly around the 8th grade, which is the grade my children are in. There's a lot in there about consent and abstinence and safe practices. Unfortunately, children in the 8th grade are sometimes engaging in these practices, and they need to know how to safely do that. I would encourage every parent in Verona to review the curriculum, to discuss it with their children, and to discuss it with their teachers should they have some questions or concerns. As a parent, you do have a right to opt out of portions of the the sex ed curriculum. And I would encourage any parent who does not wish to have their child exposed to certain lessons to discuss it with their teacher to opt out.
Thank you. Mr. Boone?
Again, I agree with my colleagues here on the board. Education in this area is crucial to living a healthy, stable life. Parents are free to be involved. They are free to opt out if they so choose. But if we are to ensure our children have confidence in how they pursue their lives, age-appropriate education is not only crucial, it is critical. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Drappi?
So sexual education is a matter of health. And this is specifically true for the new standards that help our LGBTQ community in our school system gain sexual education where they have not had that opportunity before. And in particular, that's important for them to stay healthy as well. I think informing parents is the key. And I think that, you know, the state released the standards and sort of left it to the schools, as usual, to handle it all. I think our health teachers did an excellent job in crafting grade appropriate, age appropriate curriculum, in really focusing on what the minimum of the standards are, not always taking it to the highest level, especially in the younger grades. And I think parents should opt out. If they are not comfortable, they have every right to opt out of specific lessons within our curriculum.
Thank you. Ms. Ferrera?
So I feel as though I'm going to kind of piggyback on what everyone else has said. I think that sex education is very important for our children. We've all had it over the years. I think too that the curriculum was written with a very appropriate and reasonable lens, the current curriculum. I think that as in everything that we do in education, we need to consider our students first, and we need to consider their own comfort levels and how we can ensure that we are supporting them with any type of instruction that we deliver. And then that connects back to our parents. I think it's also important that we're informing parents so that they can speak with their children at home to either front load anything or prepare questions or answer questions themselves, or opt out if that's what they choose to do.
Thank you. Any rebuttals? Moving on, then, in the general curriculum area. The Board of Ed is responsible for approving curriculum in Verona. What curriculum revisions, particularly those regarding U.S. history, would you support? Ms. Rosella?
That's a very interesting question. U.S. history has historically been taught through the lens of the white man. I would encourage and support changes that would allow for different perspectives to be taught in the classroom. It's funny, I was reading a book today, and it was about a gentleman who goes around to different plantations and Confederate battlegrounds to interview people. And one of the things that he did was he went to the second largest slave auction site in the US history. And that was right in New York City. So although we like to think in New Jersey that issues of race may not hit us as much, they do. And if we teach our students to look at things from different perspectives and all the perspectives, we'll have better students coming out.
Thank you. Mr. Boone? Sure. The Board of Ed is responsible for approving curriculum in Verona. What curriculum revisions, particularly those regarding U.S. history, would you support?
Again, I am in agreement, particularly with respect to history. It is incredibly vital that we understand the context of the role of everybody in our community and how they played in history. A deeper understanding of where we have been allows us to build a brighter and better future. This, again, goes along with the notions of empathy for not just our community, but those around us.
Thank you. Ms. Drappi.
So as we know, the board is not responsible for making those revisions. However, I would support a recommendation to revise our US history courses to really reflect our messy history at times. I think it's important that students are given an honest approach about history so that they do understand that mistakes have been made and sometimes repeatedly, so that then when they become active global citizens, that they can help prevent these mistakes from being made again. I think using primary sources in these cases is really important to help them see the different perspectives of all the players in history. But I really do support any revision in US history that allows students to see what our true history has been like.
Thank you. Ms. Ferrera.
I'm going to lean back into my own philosophy on literacy and the importance of it. I think when we're thinking about history, right, there are factual, there's a factual timeline that is very important for students to know so that they can follow along and understand what came before and what is happening now. So that again, we don't repeat history. There is something called mirrors, windows, and sliding doors in literacy that I think is really important for people to understand. Mirrors is something that, you know, we see ourselves in it. Windows, we see other perspectives. Sliding doors, completely different worlds. And I think from a literacy approach in history, we would be able to teach those facts, teach those timelines, and then also, you know, lean into some perspective to kind of have some good conversation in class.
Thank you. Mr. Spiegelman.
I was actually a history major in college, and I can say from looking at my children's history books, I think we're headed in the right direction. They're doing good things. They're a lot more diverse and inclusive and trying to take it from different perspectives. I think the school has been doing a good job. I would suggest that one thing we don't want to do is get into this notion of rewriting history every chance we get. I think there's a lot of great things to celebrate, and I don't want that to be overshadowed either.
Thank you. Any rebuttals? Please.
Yes, I have a rebuttal. I disagree with Mr. Spiegelman. I don't believe that when we are revising US history to identify the mistakes of the folks that came before us, that is rewriting history. I believe that shedding a light on historical perspectives and historical occurrences that have been left out of our curriculums and our programs for many, many years.
Thank you. Duke. Yeah. Go ahead.
I didn't say we shouldn't include more perspectives. I said we should be careful not to rewrite it. That I worry that maybe, again, the things that we should celebrate are suddenly overlooked and condemned. We still are in a great nation, one that is headed towards ideals of democracy and freedom, and certainly have misstepped over the years, but we certainly keep heading in the right direction. But no, I don't think we should obviously exclude these diverse points of view. I actually suggested that we're on the right path there.
Thank you. Anybody else? Yes, Ms. Frisella.
I don't think by adding different perspectives that we would be not celebrating the great parts of our history. We do have some great parts, but we also have some parts that are not so great. And I don't think by showing our not so great parts that we are in any way diminishing our great parts and taking away our celebrations.
Ms. Ferrer.
I think too, just piggybacking on this idea of perspective, I think it's so important in history and education. I think that we also want to make sure that we're creating cultures in the classroom where all voices are being heard and students feel comfortable asking questions and having this dialogue, because it can be really heavy dialogue for adults to have. So I think it's important that as educators, or as board members, we're supporting the educators in the professional development that they may need, or their own learning to support students through these conversations.
Thank you. Mr. Boone, do you want to comment?
Again, just to reiterate, it is crucial that we recognize the temperature in which history took place. I don't know of any desire to rewrite history, but I think it is imperative that we bravely take a step back and look at how we got here without any shame.
Thank you. Moving on to the next topic, which is special education. What are some concrete steps that the district can take to prioritize the inclusion of K through 12 students with learning disabilities, developmental disabilities, and other challenges in both the classroom setting and beyond, while keeping an eye on the budget? Mr. Boone.
Well, I'm a little self-conscious here. I'm sitting next to an expert in these areas. In watching this, it is amazing to me the challenges that parents have to go through, whether it's for a 504 or whether it's through an IEP. It is an incredible maze, and I think that parents have to fight too hard to get what is their due, what is coming to them, what is best for their student. They have to work too hard. As a board, as a school district, I would love to see us better prepare families for this incredible, arduous journey that they have to go through.
Thank you. Ms. Drappi.
Please repeat the
Sure,
question.
Sure. What are some concrete steps that the district can take to prioritize the inclusion of K through 12 students with learning disabilities, developmental disabilities, and other challenges in both the classroom setting and beyond, while keeping an eye on the budget?
This is an interesting question because this was actually raised last night at the CPAC meeting. I think one way, under recommendation of the superintendent to the board, would be to increase the amount of in-class support classes, or actually have in-class support classes, especially in our K through 8 population. Bring some of the students back into the general education population. It just helps with inclusivity all around. I think we need to leverage our Orton Gillingham teachers. We have many teachers in the elementary schools that are Orton Gillingham certified that we have yet to really utilize effectively. And I think this goes back to our, DEI initiative. When we're talking about inclusivity, we need an effective long-term plan on how to better offer opportunities for our students with learning differences and students with physical disabilities to be included in our athletic programs and our arts programs as well.
Thank you. Ms. Ferrara.
So the first thing that comes to mind here is creating an inclusive culture when it comes to children with special needs. I think that when we do that as educators, we're modeling, right, how our students will act. So I think it's building that culture. And I think also it is, as far as budget goes, it's getting more teachers in, right, where we can have some inclusion teachers, where they're in the classrooms, and able to provide that least restrictive environment for our children with special needs. And again, tying back to that culture, when we're all together in a classroom, it's like everything else, right? There's opportunity for relationships and conversations and connections. And I think that, by having that least restrictive environment and that inclusion work, we'll be able to be on a good path with that.
Thank you. Mr. Spiegelman.
I support anything that we can do to include these children in a regular classroom setting and regular activities. I think we have a lot of good teachers and aides currently at the school. I think they could use a little more support and resources. I know we have trouble keeping aides at the school and finding them. I think the elements are there. We just need to focus and bear it down. We have a new director coming in. of Special Services. I've heard very good things about this person, so I'm optimistic we'll continue to improve and move in the right direction.
Thank you. Ms. Rosella.
I could probably talk about this topic for an hour, but I'm going to keep it to my minute and a half. In terms of concrete steps that we can take, we have about 30 students in out-of-district placements in Verona for a variety of reasons, and some that do need to be in specialized school settings. However, there are some that are out of district for things like dyslexia. Kids with dyslexia should not be in an out-of-school placement in Verona. We have at least 15 teachers trained in Orton Gillingham. So what I would like to do is propose that we look at creating programs for students that are currently out of district to bring them back home to where they belong with their peers. This is also a significant savings, as many of these schools cost somewhere between $50,000 and $100,000 a year. So even a few students being brought back to district can make a significant impact on special education budgets. In addition, I do support inclusion classrooms in the elementary school level. That is the end of my time.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Ferrera. Oh, sorry. I'm, yeah, no, sorry. I lost my place. Mr. Spiegelman. Oh my gosh, what am I doing here? Okay. Yes. No. Mr. Boone. You answered too. What am I doing? Who hasn't answered? You were last. Okay, sorry. I'm on the wrong question, that's why. Rebuttal, that's what I meant to say. Any rebuttals? No? Okay, good. Moving on to gifted and talented program. The Board of Ed voted on gifted and talented criteria in a recent board meeting. However, Verona lacks a G&T program and does not employ any gifted and talented teachers. A new law was passed in 2020 and Verona has yet to fully institute it. What are your thoughts on this and how will you help remedy this? Ms. Drappi. Oh, sure. You can't hear me? Okay. Oh, for the audience, we have band practice going on behind them.
So as a board member, I happily approved our new gifted and talented program, as well as had some discussions about the rubric that they are looking to use in order to identify those students. I think it is incredibly important to be able to hire the right person for gifted and talented, because I think these students who do qualify for gifted and talented should have the opportunity to really excel and shine. But I also think this is an opportunity to have the gifted and talented program push into our classrooms as well. So all students can really benefit from it. And we're really getting our money's worth from whatever teacher we hire or promote or change roles within our district, which we've done so for our math coach and our reading coaches, the like. I really, as a student who was in gifted and talented in Landing Avenue School, I remember how wonderful that program was to really expand my ideas of critical thinking and collaboration with my peers. So I fully support it.
Great, thank you. Ms. Ferrer.
I think this goes back to supporting positive educational experiences for all of our students. I think gifted students may have a hard time having a great educational experience in the classroom without outside opportunities. And to be clear, I'm not saying by any means that they're not already getting a great education in the classroom, but gifted students quite simply sometimes need a little bit more. And I think in order to provide that educational experience and reach all learners, a gifted program is very important in town. I would be in full support of that.
Thank you. Mr. Spiegelman.
I'm a big supporter of gifted and talented program. I think that we do a very good job at the high school level of offering a differentiated curriculum to those students who can want to be challenged at the highest level. I think in the middle school and at the grammar levels, elementary school, there isn't as much. A gifted and program, talented program would help address that. And I also believe that in the elementary level, we should look into working with the teachers to offer individualized or at least slightly accelerated curriculum to those students who are up to the challenge. I know it's talked about a lot, but I haven't seen it instituted.
Thank you. Ms. Vasella?
I was very excited when the gifted and talented policy was passed. You know, Verona does lack a true gifted and talented program, giving students, you know, extra worksheets or harder math problems. That's really a way to turn off a gifted student from learning. As a professional, I've seen what happens when gifted students become bored. They check out, you know, some of them even become school avoidant because why should they bother going? There's nothing there for them. So I'm really happy that they've created a true program, or at least are on the way to doing that. It's especially important at the elementary level because once you instill that love of learning on a gifted student, they can just blossom into an incredible young adult and adult. And so anything I could do as a board member to support that, I would be happy to do and willing to do. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Boone?
I think it goes without saying, of course, I support anything in the area of gifted and talented programs. I have seen it in the elementary level with my own eyes. But the challenge, of course, comes down to budgeting. Where do we get the money? Where do we get the funds? We are teaching a creative program with gifted and talented. We need to explore creative solutions. Can we find partnerships? Is that through grant writing to get maybe special partnerships through local colleges? And then the other issue that I want to raise in this is once a student is identified as gifted and talented and maybe another student is not, I want that other student to have an opportunity to find their way into the program. Maybe developmentally, these students get onto the path later in life. They're late bloomers. We need to make sure that those students do not fall through the cracks.
Thank you. Any rebuttals? No. Okay. Moving on in the topic, two sides of one coin, college prep and life readiness. So I'm going to break it into two parts. Two of you will answer the first part. Three of you will answer the second part, but I'll ask you the question, so don't worry. The first question is, for those students who plan to attend college, how can Verona High School ensure that they're fully prepared for this? Ms. Ferreira.
So I think that in a lot of ways, the data shows that Verona High School is doing a nice job preparing our students. I believe 95% of students graduating head off onto college. You know, I think that when we're thinking about preparation, we should think about innovation, how we can best prepare them for, you know, the outside world. I think that, you know, again, I keep coming back to it, but I believe in it so much, good educational experiences, that while they're in school, they're able to, you know, have the field trips to explore. They're able to, you know, do action project work, sorry, to take their learning outside of the walls of school. I think that that's really important, that we give our students opportunity to not just kind of do their learning within the school, but also, you know, connect with classes outside of school, do the field trips, do those things for the educational experiences.
Thank you. Mr. Spiegelman.
I think we are doing a fine job at a 95% level graduating to go on to college, but I think what we can do is for those students, feeding off the gifted and talented question, that are doing well, we do make sure we challenge them and prepare them so they can get into the best college they can possibly get into or want to go to. Also, this is both academically and through extracurricular activities will help make them well-rounded students. But I also think we need to address those students that maybe are having a little bit more difficult time and make sure that they aren't lost in the system and that they're getting the attention they need and the encouragement and support.
Okay. And now the second part of the question for the remainder, for the three remaining candidates. For those who don't want to go to college, for those who wish to attend a trade school or seek job life skills, how can Verona better support this? Ms. Frisella.
I actually spoke a bit about this last night at the CPAC meeting. VOTEC is an incredible option for many of our students that we don't take advantage of nearly enough in Verona. I understand it does take some funds away from the Board of Ed, but it leads to better outcomes for the students that don't want to go to college. If my daughter came home tomorrow and told me she wanted to be a plumber, I would be the happiest mom because I know how much it costs to replace a faucet. So allowing students to have access to job training and an education that could lead to a skilled trade is invaluable. And we will always need skilled trades. It's recession proof. And in addition, if you do go to VOTEC, you can go to college. They actually have a gifted and talented program at the VOTEC in Essex County. They have AP classes at the VOTEC in Essex County. It's not like you make a choice in 9th grade and that's it.
Thank you. Mr. Boone.
Again, without a doubt, students learn at different paces and at different times. They blossom later in life. Trade schools are an awesome opportunity, but also the path to trade schools can start at the high school level. We have an incredible amount of AP classes preparing students for higher education in college and universities. I would love to see similar programs, which I have heard talk about being discussed, that AP level trade courses that, again, put the students on the path for trade certification much sooner as they get out of high school. Secondly, community colleges are an underused resource. We have several awesome community colleges in this area. We need to do more about talking up those opportunities. Maybe people hit their stride in those community colleges and find their way to secondary universities after that.
Thank you. Ms. Drappi.
So during my mandated governance for training for student achievement this past spring, it was announced that roughly 35% of all jobs that college graduates seek right after graduation will be virtually eliminated by 2035, which I thought was an astounding number. And there is a push within the NJSBA, and I agree with this push to further offer trade schools as an option for students in middle school, because for a lot of students, you can wait until your sophomore, junior, senior year to really decide what college you're looking for, but most vocational trade schools require you to start at some point during your high school career. So I think it's really important that we have a cultural shift within our guidance counselors and help train them better to offer these programs and educate our families and our students about what programs are offered.
Thank you. Any rebuttals? Sorry, go ahead.
I don't know if this is a rebuttal necessarily, but I would like to see some of these conversations happening even at the upper middle school level, like possibly 8th grade. So before students actually enter high school and families enter high school with their children, that they understand what the program is and what the options are, so that they're not necessarily getting into high school and then learning those.
Thank you. Any other? No? Okay. Moving on, next topic, class size. Same thing, I'm going to split the question. This time, 3 of you will answer the first part, 2 of you will answer the second part. With regard to an increase in student population, how will the Board of Ed ensure that specific elementary schools do not have to bear the brunt of the burden and become further overpopulated? And we'll start with Mr. Spiegelman.
I think this is a very important question, and especially considering we're expecting 2 new housing programs to come into the community. And I think I've been told it's going to be between 100 and 150 new students. I don't have exact answers as to what should be done. I've discussed it with different folks around town, and there's been everything from maybe purchasing part of one of the Catholic schools around town, or doing a joint program so that if it's elementary and whatnot. The answer is we need to start prepping for it now. The school board hasn't really begun discussing it. This is going to be a big deal. We don't have the resources, we don't have the classrooms, we don't have teachers. We need to start figuring out what to do so we are not left with a tax increase and more bonds 3 to 4 years for the community to bear.
Thank you. Ms. Varela.
Thank you. Yeah. This is a very difficult question because it does lead to a lot of conversation, which is good. I love conversation. But I think the key is that our community needs to be involved, and we need to start planning yesterday. These conversations should have happened a year or two ago, but they probably would have, except for COVID. So I think the idea is that we talk to our community. We have open houses. We get input from all the different parts of Verona that are going to be impacted, which is everybody. Aaron said 100 to 150. I heard somewhere between 80 and 120. We're talking about the same numbers. And it's not just going to impact our elementary schools. It's going to impact our middle and high schools, which are also already overcrowded in many ways. We were at our meeting yesterday, the new superintendent was talking about how difficult.
Thank you. Mr. Boone. Sure. With regard to an increase in student population, how will the Board of Ed ensure that specific elementary schools do not have to bear the brunt of the burden and become further overpopulated?
Thank you. The school's current strategic plan expires in June of 2023. Day one of the new year, this school board will have to start work on this. As has been identified, the CAMCO development, and then a couple years down the road, the Spectrum development on the other side of town will bring significant numbers to our schools. We have to remember that we have no better ally in town than the town council. And we need to, as part of our strategic plan, interact with the town council. The town gets money from the pilot program, particularly the one that is funding the Spectrum program. We need to start having those conversations as we plan out the strategic plan. Conversations with the town can help us figure out creative ways to find facilities. It can also help us work on the pilot program and what money we can get from that.
Thank you. The second part of the question for the remaining candidates. Should the board consider redistricting or busing when future development plans are completed? Ms. Drappi.
I don't believe that the school district should consider busing. The way that the state law works is that busing is not required in a district where each school is less than 2 miles. So there is no school in this district that we would send children to that would be more than 2 miles if we needed to redistrict. So for example, our policy states that if there are children moving into the district and that class size will require an overflow or will be outside of the parameters outlined in our policies, we are allowed to send that child to a different neighborhood school outside of their immediate neighborhood schooling, but that would not be done over 2 miles in order to stay within the law. Busing is incredibly expensive. It requires a tremendous effort. I think if it came down to building usage in particular, that is really something our director of facilities needs to look at and plan for.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Ferrer.
So I agree. I think busing would be, quite frankly, too expensive, right? We don't have the size town to use that. I think though that, I'm not a huge fan of the idea of redistricting. I think that there is something that is really special about our town and our community. And I think the neighborhood schools at the elementary level is part of that, where our kids can all walk to school. So I think that we have to really lean more into a possible pilot program and ways that we can expand on what we have rather than redistrict.
Thank you. Any rebuttals to anything? Yes, please, Ms. Frizella.
I don't see how we could absorb the elementary school students that are projected to be at the Camco site at the current school they're districted in, which would be F and Brown. F and Brown is already the largest school. F and Brown, if you talk to the principals and the teachers, it already is overcrowded and it houses several special programs. So I don't see of a feasible way without building that we could absorb the students without
Any other? Ms. Drappi?
Yes, so in response to, having conversations with the town council regarding the pilot properties, this has been going on for 15 years. The town council has outright refused to share any of the pilot properties. We have a new town manager, so there are new opportunities there. And I believe that this is really where we should start when engaging in talking about the needs from potential students coming in from a pilot property, as well as doing an educational study to help us assess how many students will be coming in.
Thank you. Mr. Spiegelman?
I've spoken with the town council as well, and I don't think they've absolutely refused. I think they have concerns that they're not seeing specific plans and just seeing hands out, asking for general money. I think we approach town council with a specific plan in mind, with specific details outlined. I think they'd be open to sharing some of those pilot funds.
Mr. Boone?
I just want to add it's not so easy. Again, I'm a champion of asking for the pilot funds, but it's also not so easy to go out with our hat in hands without fully understanding what the money is. The biggest challenge, I think, is a bulk of that pilot money is coming from the Spectrum project. We are several years away. So we're asking about money in a kind of, I don't want to say fantasy land, but we're asking for money that we can't even get our arms around right yet. But we do need to have that conversation.
Do you want to say it? Okay, good. Nope, just one round of rebuttals. Okay. Say, but you're free in your closing to address anything that we said. I said anything in your closing, if you want to. Okay. Moving on to the budget and the cost of education, and this is for all of you to answer. What are the greatest budget priorities given students' needs caused by the pandemic? Mr. Boone? Pandemic.
The biggest budget needs caused by the pandemic is particularly in the younger grades in elementary school. A lot of students have fallen behind in their math skills as well as their reading skills. This is not a Verona problem. This is not a excuse me, this is not a Verona problem. This is not a New Jersey problem. This is a national problem. And I would love to see us, again, creatively, because money is scarce. How do we find opportunities to ensure that students are caught up in a way that does not provide undue stress? Everybody's already stressed out. How can we provide them the resources to get back to where they need?
Thank you. Ms. Ferrera?
So I think that I would like to see interventionists, particularly in the elementary level, to support students who are falling below grade level. We know that post-pandemic, about 1/3 to 50% of students at the elementary level are reading below grade level. I think this ties back into a question that we answered earlier with respect to special ed and inclusion teachers. I think that, if done properly and thought out properly, we can potentially have special education teachers who are able to push in inclusion and support students as interventionists as well.
Thank you. Ms. Frisella?
I think first and foremost, I would listen to the teachers and hear what they say they need. Our teachers are incredible and they know what their students need in order to learn. I think we need to prioritize that. Also, as far as special education students, a lot of them were not able to really access their education during and even after COVID. I think we need to pay particular attention to those students and find ways to work with the teachers and provide them supports that they need to continue to grow.
Thank you. Mr. Spiegelman.
I think the good news here is there's actually some resources available at the federal and state level. At the federal level, I believe there was about $2.8 billion set aside and given to different schools throughout the nation. We had a windfall year as far as it went with the budget. We had more than we typically ever do because of that. I'm going through it now. I'd love to see an accounting. We're supposed to do an accounting of how that's being used for this specific cause. I don't know if the board's doing that. The other thing is the state of New Jersey has I believe it's called the Engage Every Student initiative, and they're providing resources to engage students not before school, excuse me, after school, during holidays, even during the summer, to make sure that we can be caught up. And it is imperative to be caught up because if you fall behind now, you're going to keep falling behind because you're supposed to be moving forward. So I do think this is priority one, and it's something we should focus on.
Thank you. Ms. Drappi.
COVID learning loss is obviously something every district is facing now. And in 2020, the board approved the use of the MAP growth assessment program, which really does provide teachers a real-time and it's assessed throughout the year, several times a year, and allows the teachers to really get a good handle of what gap skills the students are facing. And as our superintendent reported out in this week's board meeting, that the state is really looking at the impact that COVID learning loss has had on our first graders in particular. So I agree with Ms. Frizella. I think we trust our teachers. We ask them what they need. And we also leverage the programs that we already have, like our interventionist reading teachers that we already have, and our Edmentum Pathways program that partners with the MAP growth program to target those gap skills. And students can do that within the classroom already.
Thank you. Any rebuttals? Yes, Ms. Ferrer.
I think that our reading specialists are wonderful. The interventionists that we have are wonderful. I think, though, that the scope of students that need support is greater than any one person or two people can really provide. So I think that it's important to look outside of the scope of what we already have, because again, when our students came back to us, they came back with, more needs.
Okay. On the same topic, elaborating on the same topic for all of you now. Post-pandemic, do you think the district has done a good enough job evaluating students and identifying their learning gaps since the pandemic? If not, what would you like to see done differently? Ms. Ferreira.
I think that our teachers, in general, COVID was a really hard time for all of us, parents, teachers, students. I would like to see the use of data be a little bit stronger. I would like to make sure that teachers are being supported on how to best use that data, because a tool is only good if we fully know how to use it. So in no means, I think teachers are doing a wonderful job, but I would like to see them really get full support on how to use this data to provide the interventions, even at a classroom level without interventionists.
Thank you. Ms. Drappi.
I think the district has done a fine job. And again, I think these terms like good and fine and done well, I think they're sort of subjective based on what perspective you're looking at. What I would like to see going forward is closer examinations of the data that is being collected. When we finally get this Start Strong data, whenever that decides to show up, in conjunction with our MAP growth data that we've already instituted these past 2 weeks, in addition to using our NJSLA data that we just got from the spring. I think we need to set aside time for teachers to unpack all of this and look at what the needs are for each individual student, for grades overall, for individual classes, and let them be the assessors of essentially what they need to help these kids succeed.
Thank you. Ms. Varela.
First, I just want to say in my experience, Verona did a great job at the beginning, better than most school districts in pivoting from in-class instruction to virtual instruction. In my professional life, I've seen the results of other school districts who did not pivot so well. And it's pretty heartbreaking. Verona has already done some great, has implemented some great programs, including the math coach, which is helping train some of our teachers to help our students a little bit better. I do like data. I love data. Data is my friend. And so I like the idea. I like reading the math stuff that I get from my kids, and I even read the back. I encourage everyone to read the back and click on the links. They're really informative. It's really great. But again, it goes back to the teachers. We need to make sure our teachers are supportive and have all the tools they need to address learning loss in our students.
Thank you. Mr. Boone.
As I said earlier, everybody learns differently, and it has been no more apparent than during the pandemic. My number one worry remains the economic gap between the haves and have-nots in how they are catching up. People with means have been catching up faster. This is leaving disadvantaged groups behind. But I want to look at the positive. Again, people were learning differently over the last couple of years, using different tools. What are areas of success?
Thank you. We'll just wait a second and switch out your microphone. Go ahead.
I apologize for that. Again, what are the opportunities that we can capitalize on when we discovered that students who learn differently had areas of success, and how can we implement those? Often when people capitalize on areas of success, it helps others in ways that we did not anticipate. Let's look at that.
Thank you. Mr. Spiegelman.
I think our town is doing, the teachers are doing the best they can in helping the students recover from the learning loss with COVID. But that said, I don't think this is a question with an answer. We've never experienced anything like this before. That goes without saying. There's really not adequate benchmarking. We'll only know, unfortunately, years from now when we're able to look back. That said, I think as we move forward, and this is one of my core tenets here, I think we need to be transparent. I went looking for research today in preparation. I couldn't really find numbers about how we're doing here in Verona. I do think we need to include the community at large in this discussion. And I think the school system should be telling the parents individually and as a group how we're doing. And I think this is one of those things we may regret not doing in the future that could upset the relationship between the parents and the school board.
Thank you. Any rebuttals? Ms. Drappi.
I mean, I think it's just also important to mention that, you know, while the board is ultimately responsible for approving any curriculum or any growth measures or anything the teachers need to help remediate students with COVID learning loss, it really isn't the board's responsibility to make the decisions on how to do it or when to do it or what growth measures to use. And it's really up to our superintendent and our director of curriculum and instruction to listen to the teachers and see what they need.
Thank you. Ms. Ferraro.
I agree that it's not the board's job to write the curriculum or provide that input, but I do think that it's the role of a board member to question and to make sure that we're on the right track, right? So even though we're not writing the curriculum, we're not, right, we're just approving it, reviewing it, but I do think that it's important to ask questions and to provide input because, you know, I see the board as a liaison between the community and the superintendent and leads our district.
Thank you. Anybody else? Mr. Spiegelman.
I agree in spirit to that. I think, you know, everyone says the board is really limited on the amount of power they do have, but they do have direct access to the superintendent and they have veto power. And I think that goes a long way. And this is way too important to be able to step back and not get involved and do everything you can to make sure the students are adequately prepared and they're brought back to speed from the learning loss.
Thank you. Mr. Boone.
just one fine point here, at the risk of getting too into the weeds, but that relationship between the school board and the superintendent at the end of the day is a partnership. And those conversations need to function in a way that we are constantly moving forward. The threat of a veto power isn't necessarily something that you want to get into. You want to have a relationship with the school leadership that leads to productive results.
Thank you.
So I think that as a board member, it is very important to ask questions. As a member of the public, I often come to board meetings and ask questions. So I think that when we look at policies, particularly around curriculum and, budgeting, we should make sure that we're asking clear questions and questions in public.
Thank you. Moving on, this is another two-parter. So 3 of you will answer the first part, 2 of you will answer the second part. The first part is, how would you envision building trust and engagement between the board and the community? And we'll start with Ms. Drappi.
Something that I learned from being on the board throughout this pandemic is how to listen better. After 6-7 hours on a meeting, it is an exercise in patience, in being able to stay tuned in and appreciate the diverse perspectives. But I also think likewise, it really taught me on how to be a more effective communicator. And I think as a board as a whole, that's really something that we've worked on and still have a long way to go. I think that question and answer forums are really important, especially when we're rolling out new programs that can be perceived as controversial, or just question and answer sessions when you're getting a lot of emails from the public, questions about curriculum or questions about certain athletic programs. I think it's important as a board to be as transparent as possible with these sessions.
Thank you. Mr. Spiegelman.
This is a core tenet of my platforms. I think there is an opportunity to work a little bit better with the community. I think there have been some board meetings that got a little testy. Board members dressed down the community. The community was talking to the attorney. They weren't even talking to board members, and they weren't having answers addressed. I don't think that's the right approach. I think we need to hear everybody and address them as best we can, whether it's then at that moment or afterwards. I encourage online questions ahead of the meeting so that we can make it easier and more accessible for people to partake in the meetings. And I welcome and insist on transparency. I think some of the issues we've run into is because the board didn't think ahead that this was going to be a critically important issue or a sensitive issue, and they just approved it or they moved forward. And then a lot of parents and other community members were caught off guard.
Thank you. Ms. Ferrara.
Repeating the
Sure.
question again. Nicole.
How would you envision building trust and engagement between the board and the community?
So I think this is part of my first platform, which is just simply to listen. I think that myself as a parent, there have been times where I felt as though my voice hasn't been heard, whether it be at board meetings or even just at, on committees with admin. And it becomes very frustrating because our children are so important to us and we're a very involved community. So it's very frustrating. And I think that as a board member, one thing that I would like to implement is an idea of listening sessions where when we have these recurring topics, we give an opportunity for people to come and have dialogue rather than, the 3 minutes again. And that's for recurring topics so that parents feel as though their voices are being heard, or all community members.
Thank you. Now for the remaining candidates, this is continuing on the same topic, but a different question. Do you think that offering Zoom increases accessibility for families who cannot attend in person? Ms. Vasella.
Yes, absolutely, 100% yes. I think it allows access to not only people who may be single parents and can't leave their children at home, people who have young children, people who have children with special needs. More access is better. I would absolutely advocate for the Zoom option with questions to be brought back to the board. I understand it can be difficult, but the last few board meetings I've been to, which were recent, I mean, I think myself and Diana were the only people there for one. And I think for one, it was me and one or two other people. And that's it. Whereby when we have Zoom meetings, we are able to actually engage with the community, and the community can understand better what is actually happening at the board meetings.
Thank you. Mr. Boone.
Yes, without a doubt, absolutely, yes. I often have to watch the board meetings on the video replay. I think, again, this ties into the first part of the question of transparency, where we can consistently work to improve. And we have all sorts of technology that came out of COVID. Let's capitalize on it. And that underscores the importance that to build transparency, whether it's through Zoom or in-person meetings, is we need to find smart communications that allow us to connect with the families where they are. And Zoom is just another opportunity to do that. And by doing that, we have this dialogue that not only are we listening to the community, but we are also helping the community learn how the school board works, what the school board can do, what the school board can't do. And all of this is an ecosystem that allows us just to better integrate within the community.
Thank you. Any rebuttals? Ms. Drappi.
As a parent and as a board member, it's incredibly frustrating because the board meetings are meetings for the board in front of the public, not meetings for the public with the board. And that is incredibly frustrating. I've asked the NJSBA why this is still the way that this goes. They don't really seem to have a reasonable answer, but this is just the way that it is. That doesn't mean that we can't interact with the public during the meetings, although the public comment section is a comment, not a Q&A, again, as designed by our board meetings. I have more to say.
Thank you.
That's not long enough.
That's all right.
Okay.
Yes, Ms. Rosella.
There's a reason that we have the Open Public Meetings Act, and there's a reason why board meetings and all government town hall meetings, happen in front of the public, because board members are servants of the public. So yes, they are board meetings, but the reason they are in public is so that the citizens and the residents understand what decisions the board is making.
Thank you. Anybody else? Mr. Spiegelman.
I would go as far, I don't know where that setup came from. I would say they're public meetings, period. And the board's there for the public. And I've seen plenty of meetings where there's back and forth with questions and answers, and quite friendly and even jovial at times. So I don't know why it can't be that way. So anything we can do to push it in that direction, I'm all for.
Thank you. Anybody else? No? Okay. We'd be happy to know we're in the final question area. Yes, now we're going to get serious. Now we're going to get serious now. This is also a two-part area. This is on the subject of hiring. So two of you will answer the first part of the question. What ideas do you have to address the teacher shortage? Mr. Spiegelman.
Two thoughts there. First, I hear that, so I want to be delicate here, but the community we have here at the schools, particularly the high schools, I've heard, I don't have students there myself, but isn't necessarily the best, not the most welcoming. Sometimes teachers don't feel they're supported. I think that needs to be addressed. I think that some of that is a legacy from a past administration. And if I were elected to the board, that would be one of my higher priorities to look into. Additionally, teachers are hard to get, and it's competitive, and we offer not the most competitive starting salary for teachers. I think that's something we should look into. I know we have to be careful with our budgets, and we can't spend everywhere, but I think it's important. If we really want to get good teachers, which are the cornerstone of a good education, we should look into what we can do there.
Thank you. Ms. Rosella.
the teacher shortage is real. It's nationwide. It's happening everywhere. I would encourage that we look outside of our typical places that we recruit teachers. Dr. Miller goes to the colleges that Dr. Miller goes to, and they're the same colleges he's probably gone to for years, and he gets some great teachers. But I think we need to expand upon that, and maybe outreach to different schools. I also think that once we get teachers, obviously retaining them is very important. So again, whether it's good professional development, good mentoring, you know, cohort groups where they can just meet and talk about different things that are going on as first or second year teachers. I know as a young attorney, that was very helpful for me. And so I assume in other professions, it would also be very helpful. You know, salary is an issue. It's an issue. We do.
Thank you. Okay, for the remaining three of you, this is the second part of the question, which is really on the same topic. Do you believe the district should offer a more competitive rate to attract highly qualified teachers, paraprofessionals, and substitutes? Mr. Boone. Sure. Do you believe the district should offer a more competitive rate to attract highly qualified teachers, paraprofessionals, and substitutes?
I mean, the easy answer is yes, of course. Of course, but where the question is where does that money come from? And I think the first step, as other panelists have said, is providing an opportunity where these instructors can build their levels and work up the pay grade. You know, there's only so much we can do. Obviously we would love to get them to where they can have the more competitive rates. There was a lovely discussion speaking specifically of the paraprofessionals yesterday, as you're well aware of, where the paraprofessional crew is often hired from an outsourcing group, which there is open to debate to whether or not we are paying more to rent these resources as opposed to paying them straight up. Again, yesterday on the board meeting, you talked about turnover going to Cedar Grove, where they are paid with a full-time equivalency salary. Again, I think we need to take a look at where we're getting our recruiting pool from and what we can reasonably offer. And again, creative needs need creative solutions.
Thank you, Mr. Boone. Ms. Drappi.
You know, navigating the 2% cap for our budget during inflation is incredibly, incredibly difficult. And I think this piece is our biggest financial challenge. I do agree that we need to offer a more competitive wage in order to attract the highly qualified teachers that match our vision and mission statement. And in order to retain teachers, I think implementing a climate and culture study twice yearly will also help assess how teachers are feeling about where they work and what their needs are. In terms of the paraprofessionals, there is a huge disparity between the agency paras that we hire to fill the IEP needs and the paraprofessionals that we pay in Verona, and increasing their pay may be necessary to help retain them so they can build and work on those relationships with their students and their teachers in their classrooms as well.
Thank you. Ms. Ferrer.
I have two parts. I completely agree about, you know, ensuring that our professionals are paid a salary where we're able to keep full time, because like anything else, so much of education is through relationship building. And a para is crucial for students in a classroom who need the support. I think also that we need to be sure that we're empowering our teachers, that we're allowing them to learn and to turnkey, you know, even with the Orton Gillingham trained teachers, right, where they can learn and turnkey, and that our teachers know that the admin and the Board of Ed and the super supports them. Again, it goes back to building a good culture in district.
Thank you. Any rebuttals? Mr. Boone?
Yeah, just real quickly. I mean, it's easy to say, let's pay them more money. And we would all love to do that. But I think it's really imperative that we recognize that teachers everywhere, not just Verona, are stressed. Our students are stressed. Our parents are stressed. We're all stressed. We need to be able to have an environment where people can just take a breath and breathe. And if we can do that, our teachers are going to be able to teach. Our students are going to be able to learn without that level of anxiety. That's
Thank
the
you.
first step we got to get to.
Ms. Drappi.
The biggest concern that I have is that the salaries and benefits already make up 85% of our budget. So from a taxpayer standpoint, it is a scary thought to increase that percentage even more, because with such little wiggle room and only a 2% cap and a 2% cap on how much we can increase the budget, programs will most likely have to be cut somewhere. The money has to come from somewhere. So luckily we have this dynamic, incredible, brand new BA who's super creative and can hopefully work that out for us.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I just want to point
Ms.
out,
Grisel.
sorry, I just want to point out that the district, quote unquote, paras are actually covered under the union contract. So even if I wanted to, as a board member or the board or whoever wanted to double their wage tomorrow, it's contractual. That's what the union has negotiated for them.
Thank you. Any? Okay. Thank you. That concludes our Q&A portion. Now we'll move to closing statements. 2-minute closing statements. We'll start with Ms. Brisella.
Well, first I want to start by thanking everyone on the stage and the Council of SCAs and the League of Women Voters for putting on this great night. In addition, I want to thank my husband and my children who are at home and who have not seen me all week because I've been at one meeting or another. And of course, all my friends and community members who have supported me and have encouraged me in my run. I never imagined I'd run for elected position, but here I am. I love Verona so much that I bought 2 houses in Verona. We brought my daughter home to our first house, and we've moved to our second house soon after our second daughter came. I've watched both children grow into incredible teenagers. There's a lot to love about Verona, and we should plan now for the future so that we can maintain everything that makes Verona special, even as we face some difficult choices in the future. I hope I've earned your vote tonight, but even if I do not have a seat on the board, I will still be at the meetings, asking questions and pushing the board to think of diversity in hiring and diversity and equity in our schools, and to think of putting our kids first and to plan for the future. I think I've been to probably more board meetings than anyone on this stage other than Ms. Drappi. And I will continue to be there every chance I get. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Spiegelman.
I'll end by saying thank you to everyone coming out again, watching at home, for those who put this together, for those who are here today. This is an important election. There's a lot going on and a lot that will be decided in the next few years. Just as a reminder, my main point is putting the children first, keeping politics and personal agendas out of the policy, and bringing the community in with transparency and conversation. I hope I answered everyone's questions tonight. If you have any more, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'd be happy to address them one-on-one. I ask everyone go out on November 8th and vote. And hopefully I've done enough tonight to earn your consideration.
Thank you. Ms. Ferrera.
So I want to start by thanking everyone up here tonight. Running a campaign is something completely new to me, and it's challenging, right? There's a lot of new work. I want to thank my husband for being so supportive, my children, because it takes time away from home when you're out doing this work. I want to thank also, my friends and supporters that have been really incredible to just speaking to and feedback. And I want to thank the teachers in Verona. We have a wonderful community and they're pillars in it. So a huge heartfelt thank you. Verona is a wonderful community with great schools, great families, and wonderfully committed residents. As with everything in life, there's always opportunity for growth. It is my hope to have the chance to serve our community if elected. I believe that my platforms of listen, learn, lead encompass the work that I'll do. There are 2 open seats, and I hope to have one of your votes. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Boone. Oh, sorry, Ms. Drappi first. Mr. Boone.
We all agree that our students deserve the best possible education that the Board of Education can financially and physically provide. My experience as an educator, an active community member, and a Board of Education member proves that I'm a team player who does appreciate diverse perspectives and alternative ideas to my own. I'm someone who develops policy from the perspective of an educator, a taxpayer, a listener, and one who truly understands what all of our students need to succeed. I'm a forward thinker who is looking to plan 5-10 years into the future to set our district up for success. And I feel lucky to have grown up here and watched this community grow into the incredible place that it is. Again, I want to thank the League of Women Voters for moderating tonight. And another huge thank you to the volunteers of the Verona SCA and your seemingly endless energy to improve opportunities for Verona students and for organizing this forum. I want to thank my parents, my husband, and my children for your endless patience and sacrifices over the last 3 years and for pushing me to run again. And finally, I want to thank the candidates for sharing your ideas, hopes, and dreams for our school district. And I look forward to working with you and serving the students of Verona.
Thank you. Mr. Boone.
I'm actually quite excited by our new leadership. But this campaign isn't about me. It is about giving back what the town of Verona and our school system has given my family as we begin our 3rd decade in this town. Once this term ends, should I be fortunate enough to receive your nomination to the board, I will have lived in Verona for nearly a quarter of a century. As an adjunct educator and a communications professional, I feel that I am just incredibly blessed to see how our children have grown. As they are now leaving their nest, I see they are in an incredible position to succeed. I only want for your children what I have received here for mine. Even if you don't have children who are educated here in Verona, you benefit from a strong school system. As I said, I am excited about what the future could bring. We have a talented board or talented slate of candidates here. I think any choice is a potentially very good choice, and I look forward to November 8th.
Thank you. And thank you, candidates, for a civil and productive discussion tonight. Why don't we give them a round of applause? Well done. Thank you again. And to all the parents from the Verona Conference of SCAs who helped put this on, and to all of you attending in person and online, being active participants in the democratic process. But it only works. Remember to make your vote count. Please vote in the election on November 8th. You can go to the polls. You can use a mail-in ballot. You can vote early in person starting the weekend before the election. Whatever you choose, these guys just want you to vote. Thank you and good night.